Greetings, everybody. This is the Mad Professor from the Two Cigars and a Blunt podcast, coming on Fridays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, followed quickly by the Ashed Out After Show, and now Wednesdays, 7 Eastern, 6 Central, the Better Than Sex Sports podcast. And I want you to tell me if you've heard of this one before. One man kills another and is charged, found guilty by a jury of his peers, and goes into sentencing with the possibility of being sentenced up to 40 years. Now, during the sentencing, the judge in this case, District Judge Brad Myers, who is responsible for doling out punishment, tells the newly convicted felon that he has thought long and hard about his punishment. And because he understands that your conduct under these circumstances is likely to occur, he told the newly convicted felon, I find that a long term period of incarceration will cause an excess hardship to you and your dependents. Now, when you hear the judge tell someone this, what do you expect is going to happen? Well, in Baton Rouge, it so happens on this past Tuesday, the killer, 28-year-old Jace Orion Boyd, was sentenced to 18 months for manslaughter, a charge downgraded from second-degree murder that he was initially indicted upon. The murder of a 61-year-old Danny Buckley in a parking lot of a Trader Joe's in Baton Rouge on the 22nd of August, 2020. The killing occurred shortly after what some witnesses said was an argument between Boyd and Buckley, who was reportedly panhandling and possibly inebriated or drunk. An argument began that led to Boyd pulling a gun on Buckley and attempting to fire the weapon, which jammed and misfired. So Boyd cleared that jam and chambered another round and fatally shot Mr. Buckley. That action somewhat nullifying his call of self-defense, since he had a second to think about it, reloaded his gun and shot anyway. Now, he then called the police and stayed for questioning at the scene, which the judge also took into account for his sentencing. What the judge did not take into account for his sentencing was Mr. Boyd leaving the state while he was on bond before trial, leaving the state for what some people say is up to 3-4 months without judicial authorization, and then testing positive for marijuana use while out on bail awaiting trial. I want you to try to guess the race of the victim, the judge, and the perpetrator. But while you think about that, listen to this. Another case that's happening again in Baton Rouge is the case of 4 men who are charged, 2 of which, are 18. One is 28, and the 17-year-old who's not been identified, who himself has been charged with rape. The other 3 have been charged with principal to third-degree rape, which means they were present but did not participate in the alleged assault. The young lady, a 19-year-old LSU student, had been out drinking with friends that night, according to investigators and witnesses, and a video that's actually come out of what happened prior to everything that's happened to her once she left the bar. She was there with her friends, who reportedly left her while she was still drinking. She befriended the group of men, again, 2 18-year-olds, a 28-year-old and a 17-year-old. They offered to take her home even though she was drunk, and they probably should have just called an Uber, but they didn't trust that an Uber would get her home safely. Now, sometime during the drive, they were having issues with getting her to give them her full address, so they stopped somewhere to try to see if they could, maybe sober her up. I doubt it, though, but I don't know. During this time, the 17-year-old asked her if she wanted to have sex with him, and she said yes. She gave consent. But in Louisiana, if you're drunk, you can't legally give consent, although that's what they say about the law. They proceeded to have sex while the other 3 witnessed it. Afterward, the student, the young lady, still too drunk to give complete directions, was dropped off at a East Baton Rouge subdivision without anyone, any investigator or the perpetrators explaining why they did this. Now, the young lady wandered into the street where she was struck by a car and died at a local hospital later on. Now, an autopsy found that she'd had sex, and they decided to class it as sexual assault since she was drunk. She was 4 times the legal limit for a drunk driver here in the state of Louisiana, and had THC, the chemical compound in marijuana, in her blood. Now, the issue starts with the judge in this case. This judge, 19th Judicial District Judge Gail Horn Ray, has come under fire recently because of some of the rulings she's made of concern in other sexual assault cases. One case she vacated in 1973, the 1973 conviction of a man who was convicted of first-degree rape because of erroneous instructions given to the jury that she felt invalidated his conviction and sentencing. The man, Donald Ray Link, in 1993 applied for post-conviction relief, which was denied. Then in 2003, he decided to apply for parole, which he was also denied until he couldn't be eligible for parole. Now, to finish out his case, he was told that if he was found guilty of first-degree rape without being convicted of capital punishment, he would be eligible for parole, which they've denied him, saying that he was eligible for parole. Now, this judge has also decided to lower the bond of a teen that's been accused of 2 counts of first-degree rape without holding a public hearing or without alerting the district attorney. The district attorney in both of these cases has filed appeals. Now that you have the pertinent information to these 2 cases, I want you to guess the race of every person that's involved. And with one exception, I think I've already mentioned them, but you might not get them right. And I want you to pause right here and think about it for a second. Now, in the case of Jace Boyd, he is white. Danny Buckley, the victim, black. The judge, white. I don't know if I mentioned the name of the judge in that case, but it's an odd name. I'll have to come back to it. Now, in the case of the rape of Madison Brooks, the young lady, the tragedy of her death and everything leading up to it, her race really doesn't matter. But the race of the 4 accusers are black, white, black, and no one knows the race of the 17-year-old because since he is a minor, they've not released any information on him. Now, the judge in this case, of course, is black, which is why she's made news. Fox News, of course, has come out against her and all of her decisions, even though some of the decisions are questionable at best, but not illegal. She does have the right to vacate a conviction of someone if jury instructions weren't properly given. This the same argument Donald Trump is now trying to give will be given to appeals in New York on his conviction. Now, I say all that to say this. Yes, there is a 2-tier justice system in this country, but it doesn't just put the wealthy on the first tier, but for the most part, it always makes sure that black people are on the second or bottom tier, even when, black people are the victim. It's amazing in this country that Lady Justice, when you see statues of her at courthouses, is blindfolded. She's also holds a scale and a sword to ensure that justice remains balanced, but the punishment also remains fair and balanced. She's blindfolded so that she can't see who she's judging. Well, the problem is that judges who preside over cases and the juries who also preside, who make decisions in the cases, they're not blindfolded. They clearly get to see who it is they're judging, they're passing judgment on. And a lot of times, seeing who a defendant is or who a perpetrator is colors their judgment based on color, unfortunately. We're always on the bottom run, like I said, whether we're victim, and not always, but most of the time, even when we're the victim, we're on the bottom rung of justice. And the problem comes in, like I said, with the 18-month, I don't think I mentioned this, so I'll mention it now. The man who killed Danny Buckley, Jace Boyd, was sentenced to 18 months in the manslaughter where he could have easily gotten 40 years. So like I said, we're always on the bottom rung of justice. And I honestly don't know how that will change, how it'll ever change. I doubt it ever will. But before I go, I'm sorry, on a side note, Hunter Biden was found guilty of 3 crimes that he admitted to in a book that he just released. I'll let you think about what you want to think about on that. And because it's a big deal. He's guilty of something he admitted to doing. But all of this is just something to talk about.